Thanks for joining us for Founders and Funding. The goal of this weekly session is to learn from founders and their funders on how the deal came together, what it's like to work with investors, and to discuss strategy in current fundraising environment. So settle in. We're going to be here for a bit. You know, we're very social at TechTO, so if you want to grab a second device, maybe snap a picture of your setup, make it a selfie with the screen, and then post it on LinkedIn or Twitter. We'll be really happy, especially if you use the hashtag TechTO, and the team will interact with you. I imagine a lot of you have been to TechTO before. This is a bit different. We used to be live. We used to be, pre-COVID. You could actually meet people in person, but now it's even better because you actually can ask questions and get them answered, and we can go a bit more detail than we used to. So one ask I have for you is, if you look up there, we have a little button that says polls. We'd like to know a bit about who's coming, why they're coming. So if you can just, when you have a chance, there's a couple questions there. Just answer them, and I'll look at them throughout the event so I can actually tailor my questions. The first one's like, who's fundraising right now? The other thing is you can chat with us in the chat spot there too. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get right to it. And I would love let's start. Eva, can you introduce yourself, your background, and talk a bit about your fund?
Of course. I hope everybody hear me clearly. My name is Eva. I'm the founding and general partner of Two Small Fish Ventures. So I invest in early stage startups that have very strong network effects. Network effects is really my specialty. I even created a framework called ASSET, A-S-S-E-T, that helps people to understand how to build network effects in the product. And how did I learn about it? And what magic did I have to actually create that framework? It was because I helped my husband, Alan, the CEO and co-founder of Wattpad, to build Wattpad from its infancy to become the largest consumer internet company here in Canada. So they have over 80 million monthly users right now. So help them scale from tens of thousands of users to tens of millions. And I've invested over 20 plus companies. They all have network effects. The two founders here included. And so, if you want to ask me any questions about network effect, I'm here.
Cool. One last question, Eva. When do you invest? What size?
So right now I invest as a VC. So I have my VC fund right now. And so I invest in pre-seed, I would say all the way up to A round, but my sweet spot is actually seed or seed plus. And check size is a range, I would say, ranging from 50,000 to 250, or maybe even more, depending on the stage.
So Olivier and Sophie, introduce yourselves. Tell us about your background and maybe how you guys came to start a company together.
Want to start, Sophie?
Go ahead.
So what Eva is not saying is the reputation of Eva in the market is to be the one finding the diamonds in the rough. So all angels and VCs are following Eva and every move that Eva is making. So we're very happy to have you as an investor.
Well, thank you.
Background as engineer, coming from France, and business as well. Did all my experience in the financial industry throughout different countries, in the startup world and in the corporate world. A couple of years ago, I started my first AI company. I was the CEO of it for a couple of years. It was AI applied to the stock market. And then I left, and we had the chance to meet with Sophie to start Wondeur.
So Sophie, what's your background, and and then I want to know how you guys met too.
So yeah, funny story too. My background is in economics and political science and business, but I was very early on drawn to contemporary art as kind of an innovation space in and of itself, and a very provocative one. And I worked for I was part of the exec team of a major foundation in Europe called the Cartier Foundation, that's funded by Cartier, the jewelry brand. And that was kind of my art degree. Coming from economics and politics was kind of an interesting angle into that. And after that, I started to work for media companies, and I started to develop more and more content and innovative engagement, platforms. And that's when I met Olivier, actually, in Toronto, both French, and we both didn't want to work with French people when we met. So we tried to avoid each other for a while. And in the end, didn't succeed in completely avoiding each other. So we had to build something together. There was kind of a strong, compelling desire to bring something to the market that would be an actual game changer. And it took quite a while to actually figure out what the big problem was that we wanted to solve, that needed to be solved actually, rather than we wanted to solve. And that big problem we identified 2.5 years ago, and that's when we started the conversations with Eva, and we started to raise for Wondeur.
Sorry, just take a step back, and so explain a bit more the concept of Wondeur, because I think you're alluding to it, but you're not explaining it well. So what does Wondeur do?
So we are in the art market business and the AI business. But the thing is, when I talk about how to identify this big problem that needed to be solved, the art market has a lot of problems. We were talking about the banana story a minute ago backstage, the fact that a lot of things seem completely irrational in the art market. And what we saw as the perfect application of AI was actually this apparent irrationality that is actually built on, that is actually hiding a very rational, self-regulated system that can be described by AI and predicted. So when you go there, you enter the realm of explainability through AI, and we explain when and why price changes in the art market, why artworks go from being sold for $5,000 to being sold for $5 million 10 years later, and why actually it's predictable and makes sense. So it's really,
Yeah, and Alex, to follow up on what Sophie said, it's an important problem because it's impacting about $1.8 trillion of our assets. So it's a gigantic market. And most of those assets can't transact because nobody understands the value and how value change. Most of these assets can't be leveraged because you don't understand the values, you can't lend against, you can't do a risk profile on it. And they can't be properly insured because you don't understand the risk level. So most of those assets, ill-insured, not lent against, and not transacting.
Cool.
So this is where we impact the market.
And so let's go back. So this is, you guys come together 2.5 years ago. You start talking about the idea, and I think, Olivier, you mentioned you started talking to Eva early on. So when exactly did you reach out to Eva?
Through CDL. So we were fortunate to join CDL. And we met actually Eva before. Sorry, no, before.
It was before.
And actually, Eva helped us, understand the potential of CDL and how we should join CDL. I think the first word that Eva said was we were a diamond in the rough. So we were not sure if it was a compliment or not. So actually, go on.
Maybe I'll flip it to Eva. So interesting. You met. How did you end up connecting with Olivier and Sophie before CDL? What was your initial impression?
So happy to share the whole story because I guess, they, have met a lot of investors. So sometimes, the stories kind of like went into haywire. How did I even meet you, right? So let me tell you the full story. So what happened was, someone from the DMZ community, I think it was Valerie, she told me, hey, there's this one interesting company, went through the DMZ community. Maybe you should talk to them and try to, help them out. But see, the thing is when I met them, I was still an angel investor. So I was basically investing my own capital with a couple of friends syndicated with me. And it was really a passion project for me at the time, was just kind of like go out, meet founders, understand what their struggles are. Because at the end of the day, I'm an entrepreneur turned VC or turned investor. Me and Alan, when he was building Wattpad, we were literally struggling at the verge of selling our house and continue to fund Wattpad. So I understand, how it was like to be on the other side of the table, like being an entrepreneur, trying to kind of like figure out, the mess that you have kind of created for yourself and for your family in a way. And it was always my passion to kind of like listen to them and see how I can be helpful. So when Valerie said, you should meet these two guys, and I did, and I had no idea what they were doing. And when they first approached me, they were saying that I know how to evaluate, art. I'm like, hold on a second. Okay, now you're touching two things that I actually love. First of all, I love shopping. I always shop for deals. I never buy things in full price. So I'm like, okay, so now I may have a tool to tell me to go, treasure hunting for the undiscovered gems in the art world. And second of all, I'm very data driven. meanings that I want to know how they kind of come up with the pricing. It's very much like when we actually look at startup opportunities. Why did this guy come and say, you know what, my company worth $5 million and I'm raising one, and then the other guy, similar traction, similar concept, but then they're like, my company is actually being valuated at 20. So, there are a lot of obviously gut feel in it, but then at the same time, there are actually data around it that actually get us to that kind of numbers. So they brought the two things together, shopping and art, and and I'm like, okay, totally. I need to kind of like take a look at it. And it was really, really a diamond in the rough at the time, because when they were presenting to me, the very first question I said, tell me how art is being evaluated. Because, when I walk into art galleries, this guy said, this piece is like $5,000. I looked at it. I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't even pay $5 for it. And then the other piece of art is like, so beautiful. And I'm surprised. Is what? $500? I wouldn't pay $5,000 for it. So not that I will, but you know what I mean? So I was kind of like, how art it's being evaluated. It's a mystery to people like myself. And I think, if they have that kind of technology or share that kind of knowledge to the greater mass, I think it's just kind of very much like how the stock market in the early days was being transformed. Because stock markets, we're talking about in the 20s and the 30s, people had no idea how to evaluate a company. It's all kind of like, what, my friends say this company it's doing great and it's worth a lot, and no one had any knowledge of how stock market would work at the time. But now everybody know how stock market work. Well, it's still kind of a mystery, but then you have quarterly results, you have those kind of things, potential earning, equity ratio, and all those kinds. There are a lot of metrics around it. So I said, I want to know how art is being evaluated and how you can help them. And very quickly, I saw they have a very strong data network effect in the product. And that what really, really attracts me. It's more than just the AI component of how that prediction actually makes happen, is how they can actually make the product continuously become more and more intelligent as they interact with more and more data, and most importantly, proprietary data. And so I said, you know what? I think this company is worth my time to give them a hand and see how I can, help them moving forward.
So let me, interesting. So you met them through Val Fox at DMZ. So actually, I'm going to sidetrack to Jason's question up there. He asked, how important is DMZ and CDL for companies to find and connect with capital? Like, do you think you would have, is there any way, Olivier and Sophie and Eva, that you guys would have connected if it wasn't for DMZ and CDL? Or, and how important are they for startups?
I think, what, let me just kind of answer it from an investor perspective. If you're part of a community, usually investors will not say no to to kind of like have a first meeting, because of the relationships that we have with those organizations. But does it mean that it's ultra important? I don't think so, because I do actually have met with companies in those community that were just too early, or sometimes it's just totally not my field, that I didn't do anything more other than, yep, interesting, but thank you for sharing with me. So I think what's more important, I actually feel that, is to have people that are willing to vouch for you, that are active in the ecosystem. They may not necessarily be angels. They may not necessarily be VC. So let's say, I'm just kind of like making it up right now. One of my portfolio, companies, Benchside, Liran is the CEO, and you happen to kind of like bump into him in an event, and you kind of like talk to him, and he's like, you know what, it's very interesting. I think Eva will be interested to talk to you. Liran, connect me. I guarantee you I will respond. The reason is because someone even took the time to listen to your pitch, willing to make an intro. That person has already spent at least half an hour, if not 45 minutes with you, and willing to, stick the neck out there and say, let me try to see if I can connect you. That is already a vote of confidence. And I think that vote of confidence is very important, to move you forward.
So I'm going to flip it to you, Olivier and Sophie. Because I think so it sounds like you were in DMZ and you went CDL. How important would you recommend founders find programs like that?
You want the true answer? Or?
Yes. I'm no bullshit. You know that, Olivier.
Okay, I speak for myself. Sophie might have a different opinion. I found the DMZ a great organization to have your office, but in terms of connecting with investor or sharing best practices with fellow entrepreneur, I didn't find it very efficient at all. However, CDL has been an extraordinary experience, I have to say, because it's all about the exposure to great investors. And you have a lot of great investors. You have a lot of investors at CDL. So the exposure is immediate, it's strong. And if you have the chance to have, as Eva mentioned, a couple of believers in the audience that follow you every 6 weeks, then it accelerates your ability to meet the right people for the funding that you need. But so, Eva, you're right at the same time. It's all about having people who really believe in what you do. So they could be outside of CDL, they could be outside of DMZ. CDL is just, it accelerates the number of exposure that you can have towards people who can potentially believe in you.
And Sophie, do you have a different opinion or?
No, I think it's interesting actually that that intro through Valerie Fox was the founder of DMZ. Yeah. And when she made that intro to Eva, that was way after she left DMZ and we left DMZ. So we were not part of the DMZ community anymore. She had left behind DMZ behind, so to speak. She was doing other stuff and building more accelerators elsewhere. And I think the personal vouching was really what mattered to us. The fact that it was not so much the DMZ, it was Val Fox, because she has this kind of, she's a very busy person. And she had taken the time to follow us through the years, one in many companies, because she can't be following every company that goes through DMZ. And just that felt that, it was kind of a special intro she was making. And it's true that the difficulty with DMZ is the fact that you're one in many. There are so many companies there that to actually get the attention from people like Valerie is tough. So we were lucky we got on her radar quite early on, and we kept in touch with her through the years. But I think the beauty of CDL, as a kind of by contrast, is that there are a lot of companies, but you get that one-on-one time, you get that face time with, even if it's just 10 minutes in those one-on-one meetings with people that you actually want to get to. And that's priceless. It's huge. And in terms of how CDL actually helped us think through how we were to position our company to raise, it was a huge accelerator of how to position that pitch, because we had to do so many of these, pitches, 10 minutes conversations.
So first of all, I just want to tell the audience, I see lots of great questions. I'll get to them at the appropriate time because I do want to get through some stuff. And I think you may have Olivier and Sophie, you may have sold someone that Jacqueline there says she wants to invest in the business. So maybe we'll connect you after. But Eva, I want to go back to the story. You're saying, okay, you met them. And I actually remember because you introduced me to them, Olivier and Sophie, before CDL. So I can't recall at that time, did you commit to their initial round before CDL?
Yeah.
Kind of, yes and no. See, the thing is, every investor, especially me, I should say, I'm a very disciplined, investor, that I have principles that I don't cross the lines, meaning that I don't invest in uncapped notes. So now you know. So if you have an uncapped note, don't come to me. I don't invest unless there's a lead, and and I don't invest unless there is enough traction. Whether it's at the data level or at the usage level, that the network effect is naturally growing. So in a way, they met a couple of the thresholds. It's not an uncapped. They actually have some data. At least the engine is working and they are actually predicting and things like that. But one thing was missing was the lead investor.
Okay.
And so I was like, you know what? I am so about to write the check, so let me help you find a lead. Because I think it's very important. At the time I was an angel, and my check was so small that it's not going to make an impact. In terms of the runway. Yeah, it can kind of like give a little bit of it, but I'm not writing them a $200,000 check. I was not, writing them $500,000 check, can kind of like give them that kind of a runway that's necessary for 12 to 18 months. So I said, let me help you find a lead. If not, at least I help you to kind of like put together an awesome angel round that has all the stakeholders in there that will be able to help you move forward. So that's why I was not actually invested at the time, but I was actively working to get them to the point that I can write a check. So I was basically telling everyone, I'm like, my check was ready. Are you ready? Right.
Cool. I see a question from Bruce asking what uncapped means. So I'll just quickly answer that. So lots of people use what's called a safe to raise money, and a safe, it says we're going to agree on the maximum valuation this will be in the future when we actually. So what you're actually buying is the right to almost convert and buy shares at a future price. And usually they have a price, like it might be 3 million, 5 million, 10 million. Sometimes you see founders try to raise an uncapped note, says, hey, basically we'll give you a discount on the next round. And I tend to agree with what I've seen in life, as Eva is right. If you see an uncapped note, it's usually because there's a round about to come together, or it's a bunch of angels that haven't had experience. So I hope that answers the question. So like, I want to spend a few more minutes on this initial raise. So if I remember correctly, I think one reason you did have so much, Olivier and Sophie had so much success at CDL was that Eva and a few other people were making introductions. And I think, if I'm correct, did that round come together mostly with angels?
Mostly with angels and mostly from CDL.
Yeah.
So you have to imagine Eva running around before and during the sessions, and then you were able to convince Global Life to join in. And Global Life, it's a ripple effect, and then Global Life run after other people. And it's a group effect at the end of the day. It's a dynamic that is created.
It's a network effect.
It's a network effect.
It always comes back to network effects, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
And you get all those people who say, I'm in. And then there's the fear of missing out. So more people come in. And then as you go through the process, which is very short with the safe, about 20% will drop, but you get your first round of funding through CDL like this.
So now let's go back. It's 2 years ago. You go through CDL, you get this first round closed. You have enough money to actually build a company. What happened? Like, it's been 2 years since. So like, what happened after the round closed?
So what's interesting is that then you never hear back from some investors. And then some investors you really develop a relationship with. So it's, Eva, Alex, Eva brought you to us, I think.
Yes.
So, we've been working with you very closely. We've been working with a few of our investors really closely. And then some others are just, just not interested in contributing anything more than just money. So then you just give them, what's really important in the process is to share the progress of the company, the struggles, and to have a very open communication channel with your investors.
So maybe take it away from investors, but like, you had an idea. What was reality when you went to what with the business? And then let's get back to the investors after. So tell us, you had this idea, you could get pricing for art. What was the next challenge? Did you build the model out?
Yeah.
Did you figure out the business model? Like, where were you? And what?
Yeah. So before the funding, we had already all the team pre-hired. So as soon as funding came in, everybody was hired. Everybody was ready to work on it. The first 6 months, it was a little bit of AI, but mostly data.
Yeah.
Because the data we were working on at that time was extremely fragmented, not verified. And the exercise that we needed to do to accomplish was a global data capture exercise. So we needed to cover the entirety of the art world.
So actually, I'm going to interrupt because there's actually very good, because you're talking about data, and Bruce actually asked a really good question. For art pricing, are you pulling data from completed auctions? So I remember having discussions. So what's your view on the data? Because when you say you're pulling data, what data did you pull?
What we do is fundamental analysis. So we're looking at what explain prices. So if you look at auction data, it looks like millions of data, but they're wrong. They're wrong because if you look at how many artists do have transaction in the auction market in a repeat way, you're going to find only 3,000 out of 250,000. So you could look at what's happening for those 3,000 only, but it would not be a representation of the entirety of the market. But even for those, it's wrong because what explains changing prices in this market is mostly due to financial engineering, competition between billionaires, and the hyper fragmentation of the market itself, where something could be selling for $200,000 in one country and $10,000 for another country because of the lack of knowledge. So this data is the wrong data to use. The right data to use is, strangely enough, data that people who are 70 years old, 80 years old, who are art historian, people you don't like usually, they know what kind of data you need to look for. So we took their perspective. But this data, super messy, super not verified, super fragmented. So it was a lot of money to be spent there, energy.
So
yeah. So when we talk about fundamental analysis, sometimes we draw a comparison with the stock market just for the sake of simplicity. Looking at auction data would be the equivalent of looking at the stock price. We are looking at the fundamentals of the companies. So we're looking at the financial statements of the companies as opposed to the stock price. We're looking at what is the intrinsic value behind the stock and the potential future earnings and all of that, in order to be able to say, well, this stock is expensive or it's cheap. So it's really the bottom-up approach. And so that is based on the data that experts have been looking at forever. But these experts are bad in math, bad in data, and they're basically they have more of a detective kind of mindset. So they're good at capturing information and then making it go through their personal algorithm to make up appraisals and decisions, so to speak. So we emulated that process.
So again, now going back to what you're saying is, right after you raised the money, you built this model, you collected data, and now you were proving that your thesis could work, and that Eva could see that data network effect in use. And then I think from what I recall is then you were trying to figure out who the first customers are and what the business model is. So, and actually I'm going to take another question. So Nam asked a little while ago, do you see a rise of blockchain and AI combination in the world of art and evaluation and authentication? And I remember you were looking at blockchain. So just maybe you can answer that question, and then we can get back to how you got to model and how you leveraged Eva and other investors.
Blockchain, very easy. So we looked upon building our own blockchain system at one point. We decided not to. There are two companies we partnered with, one in New York, one was in Europe. Both are leader in the field around blockchain and art. And so this is, so we outsource the technology, so to speak, and we think it's the right move. Blockchain and art is going to be big, but not now. It's going to take 2 to 3 years. It's going to take a lot of time. So it's better to have them taking the risk than us.
Cool. And so
in terms of who the customer is and how to approach the market, I think one big focus we had very early on was it's a market that's notoriously resistant to change, that is very, that doesn't want to hear about technology replacing experts. So our positioning very early on was, okay, we're going to actually enable the experts. We're going to enable the market. And to do that, we found one player in the market that was not, I'm going to use a very bad word, corrupted by the market. But it's true that it's the one unbiased player in the market was the insurer. Because the insurer is not buying or selling the art, but they have a very strong incentive in having the right value attached to the piece in case of a claim, in case of damage. So we started to work with insurers to test if they could be our first users to bring actually the credibility to what we were doing. And in the end, the credibility was a very strong focus in the first, I would say, 8 to 12 months of the company, because no matter if we were right, if people didn't believe we were, we couldn't go anywhere. So we had people, it was really important for actually experts and people at the top of their field to say, this works. This is very sound. This is very, very solid and robust. And we're using it as insurers. So that was a strong focus because the acceptance of the technology was, it was not a given initially.
Interesting. And then, so you figured a way to go. At this point, you have sort of the data network effect, the modeling working, an idea of the business model. How did you leverage Eva? And at this point, what was the conversations like? How was she helping you out?
So you need to know that Eva is very blunt. She's no bullshit, right?
So Eva, what feedback did you give? Like, come on.
Yeah, go ahead.
No one's gonna be insulted. What feedback did you give them at this point?
Well, see, the thing is right now, I think they have certainly grown up a lot, because when I first dealt with them, I would say that they were very passionate with the technology, very passionate, with the market, but they don't necessarily know what the product should be. And that's where I comes in, because my expertise, obviously, as I keep saying, network effect, but at the end of the day, what it is to actually create a product that actually solve a problem and leverage network effects to be the defensibility. So in the last little while, they were, they have a great technology, and they were literally trying to create a product for the market that they were trying to surface. So at one point they built a product for the art galleries. At one point they had a product for museums. But those are not necessarily the people actually have a hard problem to solve. So right now they found a problem, and that's with the insurance company, with the financial industry. We knew it all along, but then they didn't necessarily had the enough knowledge of what problem or what workflow or what kind of work process the people were in, day in, day out, trying to kind of like deal with when it comes to art valuation. So now I'm very proud that they actually had those, have finished all those customer exploration. They even secure contracts, to pilot, the technology in a suite of a product, rather than just like, hey, I got an algorithm that can tell you the art value, but they actually built a product that works in the workflow of an insurance company. And so I think they have now finally got that point that they are going to be servicing their customer very soon.
So I want to ask a follow-up question there. So you're blunt and you saw the need to help them focus. How do you do it in a way that's constructive, and like, I guess, how do you help them get there? Like, is it just?
Can I answer this one?
Okay, cool.
Eva is blunt, but she's not making it personal, and that's very key. She's talking about the business. We're not the business. She's talking about the product. We're talking about the strategy. We're not the strategy. We're not the product. We're not all of things. So I think what I've seen through the last 10 years in the startup world is when you have an investor like Eva, who is direct around business issues and so on and so forth, or critics around strategy, she doesn't make it personal. So it makes the conversation super easy. When someone make it personal, like, why you're not doing this, what you may be not good at it, or you're wrong at that. When they make it personal, then you're naturally in the defensive. And this is where dialogue doesn't happen. So when you have someone that's blunt, it doesn't make it personal. It just make it very efficient. And then you listen pretty easily.
Well, thanks so much, for saying that, Olivier. I think, let me just kind of like walk back, a few steps, and you can understand what I mean by I am blunt, but at the same time, in a constructive way. Yeah. The reason is because I think, I didn't speak from a high horse. It's not that, I have been in investment banking or in, the VC world and never run a company. As I was saying, me and Alan were this close of selling a house, so that we can, feed our family and at the same time, continue to build Wattpad. So I had my fair share of sweat and blood and tears in the startup world for many years. So I don't want them to make the same mistakes that we had. And I certainly want to fast track them, to the success that where we are now with Wattpad. So my position has always been, let me tell you the pain that I have had, given what you're trying to do right now, because we did try it, not obviously in a totally different context, but what you were trying to do, I've been there. Don't go down that path. It was a very, very painful path. So I think, that adds credibility when I was blunt, because I was not trying to kind of tear you down, as I was like, I had been there. It is going to be very difficult.
I thought Wattpad was an overnight success.
13 years of overnight success. I think it's quite an overnight.
Yeah. Well, that's how it'll be played up in the States when they start realizing Wattpad is like YouTube. So I actually have a lot more questions, but I've seen a lot of good questions posted, and I want to have a chance to get to them. And I've seen some for everyone that's talking. So I'll just go and hit a bunch of them right now. So Paul asks, could your data be predictive, like scouting for future art star prospects?
Yes.
Yes. Are you guys investing on this?
It's not the product we are selling to the market today, but it's the product we've been developing for 8 months.
And
And there are many different implications to that. The fact that the art world is predictable is actually built in the structure of this network and how it works. The impact on that, on what it means in terms of transforming art into a full-fledged asset that can be managed properly, is huge for wealth management and also for insurance.
You know, there's an interesting twist in forecasting our ability to predict the future. We were able to do it by understanding bias.
Huh. Explain what you mean.
So often, you know, there's a lot of discussion in the world around AI and responsible AI, and the fact that it has a tendency to create. But actually, the bias in the art world toward gender, for instance, men and women artists, and how they value over time, how their trajectory evolve over time, is very strong. Not more, no less than society, but it's very strong. So as an AI company, we were forced to really dive and invest a lot of money in the last 6-7 months in understanding what is the impact of bias on valuation and future valuation. So we built an expertise on that, and that opened up another market, which is not a market where we sell, Eva, as you know, but where we get data, the museum, which is a trove of data for us, which is gigantic. And we're entering those rooms because of the bias that we can measure, and the bias help us to predict the future.
So the way that I would just kind of like summarize it, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, because you guys are living and breathing in that space. You know, our valuation, it's all about indicators. You know, historical, transaction data, people bias, and things like that. So the more information that they can collect in terms of signals in the market, whether, you know, the museum is going to be having an exhibit of them, or, you know, they you know, even the tickets were oversold, you know, for this particular exhibition. Like, those are all indicators of what the demand of that piece of art is like. And, you know, those are proprietary data set, and that's where the network effect comes in this product.
Absolutely.
So looking for the question, I think I want to get one more question to you, Eva. I think Nam was asking, how do you know when you're looking at a company from network effect, it's not just a small group of people that's working and it has the ability to scale?
That's an excellent question, because that is the question that I ask myself every day when I am dealing with entrepreneurs who pitch to me. So the way that I looked at it is, network effect should happen in the absence of marketing during the early days. So if anybody is trying to create a network effect based product, and, you know, during the first 5 months of the production, and they say, oh, I actually haven't done any marketing yet, so that's why it's actually not happening, that's why it's no adoption, then I think the focus was wrong. Because if you look at network effect, naturally, it's, you know, the coronavirus is the best way to describe it. You know, one person has it, you know, inevitably you should be able to pass it on to another person. Whether you're being able to pass on a 0.5 person or 0.9 person or 0.13 person, like what, the chancellor in Germany was saying, you know, that is just a coefficient, that is just a number, but the network should naturally be forming in some way. So I look at that, you can say it viralness, but then at the same time, viralness, it could just means that, oh, I like it, so I tell you, and you use it as well. But network is actually more than just the virality of it. It's like, I am on it, and in order for you to transact or to converse or to connect with me, you have to be on the same network as well. Mm-hmm. So that is what I'm looking for. It's like, does the product, in the absence of pumping money into marketing, is naturally growing, and are people naturally allowed me to use the word transact, but transact may not necessarily be the right context, but it's like connect on the same platform to do something together. And obviously some products are very niche. Let's say you want to actually create a product that only for artists to talk. Obviously, then it's a very small a market of just artists. But if I can look at it, it's like the product, it's actually beyond the artist space from a data perspective. because people need that piece of data, to make decisions. So let me just perhaps, walk away from a little bit of the Wondeur context and use Wattpad as an example. Then you'll understand what I mean by that. So Wattpad, as most of you know, is a multi-platform entertainment company. We started off as an app that allows people to share fictional stories from romance, sci-fi, teen fic, chapter by chapter, very much like people share videos on YouTube, pictures on Instagram. So someone, wrote a story, another person wants to read it. So that, to me, you can say is a transaction, but you can say it's a connection as well. So from on the surface, it's a very niche market, because who wants to write a story and who wants to read a story? It's only readers and writers, right? But as you continue to grow that network, the data set that we actually collected all in a sudden piqued the interest of a much larger audience, because we know what stories is up and rising, especially with AI coming into play. We can even predict the success of the story, understand the context of the story far better than any human. We have over 500 million stories already been shared on our platform. No one single human can kind of tell me what's up and rising by just, picking some story they like. So that's why machine learning and AI is ultra important in the success of Wattpad. So now that we have the analytics, we can do the prediction. Then all of a sudden, who needs to know what's up and rising? Who needs to know, what teenagers or the pop culture is like? We got entertainment companies interested in us. Movie industry wants to make movies with us. TV shows, Hulu. We even have a Hulu shows. We have numerous, New York Times bestseller. Were born from within Wattpad. In the community. So the publishing industry wanted us, but who said we cannot actually have merchandise? Coming up from the Wattpad community. What is the most beloved character that people want to buy a necklace because he was wearing it? So these are all data that allowed us to grow beyond the reader and writer sphere. Then that's what I mean by the, looking at the data network effect that potentially can bring the product beyond, the initial market that people were thinking about. And that's what I do all the time with companies, and I'm sure that Olivier and Sophie can testify. It's like I keep asking this question. What are you? What would you be when you grow up? 10 years later, the company should be very different than what I'm looking at right now. And what would that look like? Will you be able to kind of make use of the data network that any of your product that your product is actually building right now to create new and interesting and innovative business model that doesn't exist at the moment?
Interesting. That's a strong answer, and I think you also have a couple of blog posts on this subject too. So we're running short of time because I want to give people time to network. I had a lot more questions which we didn't get to, but what I'm going to ask Olivier, Sophie, and Eva, there's a bunch of good questions that we still haven't got to. Can we shoot them to you and then just basically get answers that we can share with the people that view this episode?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean,
go on.
Yeah, certainly. You guys can certainly shoot me questions. I will certainly work with Alex and his team, to get back to you guys in a timely fashion. Sometimes I have to be blunt and honest. I probably won't be able to answer all of them, but I will try my best to sum up some of my knowledge and share with the larger community.
What I'd ask for you, Eva, is if just you point us a couple of your blog posts or writings, because I think just even having the latest version of your framework to share with us people that attended today is really helpful. And
of course.
Yeah. So thank you all for your time. Now, just for people viewing, we still have a new poll that's been added up there. So if you can answer that before you, right now, we'd really appreciate it. If you enjoyed what we're doing, please share some tips and some learnings on LinkedIn or Twitter with the hashtag TechTO. Also, if you want to participate with the TechTO community, we do have like a membership program right now, which is $20 a month. That gives you access to all our events and some behind the scenes Slack channels and like transcripts of all our events. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go networking. So if you look over there's a little button that says networking, but before you go there, how it works is, since we're not in person, what it does, it's sort of like what this thing called chat roulette, but without any nasty bad things that chat roulette had. It matches you with someone else in the audience and it gives you 3 minutes. And what we want you to do in those 3 minutes is not just ask, what do you do, what's your job, but given the current environment, really get to know someone and open up and ask how you can help, and maybe think of it a community and spend those 3 minutes getting to know someone. There'll be a button that lets you connect to each other after at the bottom. So if you actually had a good time talking to that person, you could connect with her or him. But you have exactly 3 minutes and it kicks you out. And then you can do, but we're going to have it open for half an hour so you can meet up to 10 people. Thank you all for coming. And once again, Eva, Olivier, and Sophie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Welcome. Take care.